So I'm with Christoph Thies from Greenpeace, and you're based in Hamburg.
That's correct, yeah.
And we're here at COP24 in Katowice. How are you finding it here?
Well, I think it's a very well organized conference. What I really like is that you don't need to run very long from place to place, but it is exhausting as usual. We're in the middle of the second week, and I'm looking forward to go home.
And what is it that Greenpeace is hoping to achieve, particularly at this conference?
Well, we would very much like to raise ambition. I mean, we understand that at this conference it's also about to finish the rules, how the Paris Agreement is supposed to be implemented. And the rules, of course, also determine how ambitiously we can implement the Paris Agreement. And for us, ambition really, in terms of mitigation, really means to try and stay within the 1.5 degree limit, as the IPCC report clearly pointed out that even the world with 2 degrees would already a very bad one.
And in terms of doing that through the natural processes, the natural world, rather than any technical interventions.
Yeah, I mean, that is my speciality. That's where I'm focusing on in Greenpeace, is what can we do to better protect and actually restore our natural things, which first and foremost are the world's forests.
But you were saying, we met yesterday, and you were just making the distinction between reforestation and afforestation, and there seems to be a confusion that
That's correct, yeah.
Restoring existing forests.
Yes, I mean, the only thing that reforestation and afforestation have in common is trees.
Yes, that's
all the rest is, in our view, decisively different. So we think, of course, maybe another thing they have in common, they require land. Land in the sense of reforestation, land that used to be forest and could be brought back to forest. And what we would advocate for is to aim back at the native forest vegetation, that some of which we have lost, because then you can really combine climate protection with nature protection.
And then also to rejuvenate land in other ways, so agricultural practices and...
Yeah, I mean, I think there we should not have so high expectations, because we need the world's agricultural lands to feed the world in a much more sustainable way than today, with less fertilizers and less, and no chemical pesticides, etc., etc. And so I think adaptation, food security are much more important. I definitely do see some mitigation potential in agriculture, for instance through organic farming practices and agroecology, but the bigger potential is clearly with forests.
Now, yesterday we were at an interesting meeting on geoengineering. Organized by the Climate Action Network.
Right.
How did you find that meeting?
I think this kind of meeting is very important. It's a very complex, difficult issue, and in the middle of a conference it takes time. But I think civil society is very good for a network like CAN to advance these discussions and arrive at clear positions.
Because there were 2 things talked about. One was negative emissions, which is kind of already written into the IPCC 1.5 report.
Right.
And then a little bit was talked about solar radiation management, which is not written into the report.
Yes, and on the first one, I don't really like the term, because I think from a scientific point of view there is no such thing as negative emissions. Emissions are always in one way.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And also because politically I also don't like the term, because it hides the fact that we need to look at the full picture, at the gross emissions, the real emissions on one side, and then the removals on the other side. So that only then we can see how much can we do to bring the emissions down and the removals up. And bringing the removals up, we would very much favor not technological ways. I mean, I'm a chemist. You can capture CO2, I know. In the laboratory the reaction works, but I would much prefer to use the very old invention of nature called photosynthesis. I think it's 3 billion years old, it's very tested, to do the utmost there and then see how far we can get with that. Restoring forests, protecting forests, peatlands, coastal ecosystems, mangrove salt masters, what have you. You know, there's a lot we can do.
And what do you see as the role of solar radiation management, or at least discussions about solar radiation management?
Well, I personally wish that we never need to enter there.
And I think we agree. None of us want this.
Because I think there is an enormous risk that we create situations we can no longer control. Like, what if we do this and it gets too cold on the planet, and then we have no way to bring it back to... I think for me this is really like playing God. Whereas
I think perhaps there's another side to it, which is that we really need to do the important things with forests and with reductions of emissions and stopping burning fossil fuels. And if we think that maybe solar radiation management can buy us some time, then we will take that time. And the longer we take to fix the problems we've got, the worse things will get. That's my worry, is that just the mindset that we get more time. Great. Then let's take
absolutely,
the time.
and that's why we need to keep talking about getting rid of fossil fuels. Even though I'm sometimes a bit jealous as a forest guy that this conference here is talking 98% only about the fossil side of the problem, and we know that forest and nature can become 25%, 30% of the whole mitigation solution quite soon, and still it only gets 2% of the green climate funding. It deserves more attention. But I think another thing about solar radiation is I think we need to fix the carbon problem, because even if theoretically there would be options to cool the earth, we still have this carbon problem, ocean acidification. So maybe we have to investigate technologies, and I'm also a scientist and a researcher, and I think humankind needs to always research things. But I saw your talk with Kevin Anderson on the web, when he said, maybe we have to be open to different technologies. Also, like organic farming, in my view, can be high-tech, can be very modern, but it applies ecological principles. So we should be open to technology. But what he said I like very much. We should assume none of this will work.
That's the thing.
This should be our precautionary principle.
Absolutely.
And the only thing that we know works is nature.
It's always been...
That's why I'm so passionate about this. And
so we're coming to the end of this COP24 in Katowice, and how do you feel? Is there optimism, or is it much the same?
There's not much optimism. I feel that the Polish presidency, did not have a very big appetite to advance ambition here at the conference. Maybe we get some positive surprises in the last 3 days, but I'm skeptical. And knowing that we are here in an old coal and steel area, that they still burn coal. Like I'm German, my country unfortunately still does too.
Yes.
So that it's not getting on the right path. And then, of course, my problem is, then we really, if we go on like this, then we would need to take massive amounts of CO2 out of the atmosphere. Yes. And this might go then beyond what nature can provide in a sustainable way. But I'm still hopeful that pressure will be increasing over time. There is global stocktake in 2023. There is new NCDs, new national contributions are supposed to come up in 1 or 2 years. So there's still a process, but
we're running out of time.
We tell this each other year after year, and I am still. There is still reason for some optimism, but it's not going well until now. What can I say?
Yeah. And what about in Germany? Do you feel that Germany...
I think it's a disaster that the Coal Commission in Germany could not until now agree. Our Greenpeace Germany executive director was part of this commission, or is still part. Now I understand it's postponed. They continue. And what can we expect here in Poland when a country like Germany is not able to send a clear signal to the rest of the world to at least ban the worst form of fossil fuel very soon?
So I grew up in Australia, and in Australia there's prospects of even more coal.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere coal is
There is
somehow.
still a lot of coal in under the earth, and
It's too easy.
it is very easy, and we really need to step up the pace in getting rid of it, and maybe also we should also avoid the mistake of burning biomass instead of coal and oil.
Well, that just
because
takes up
that's-
land, which we need.
Because then we just destroy our natural things. It is at best maybe a zero-sum game. We might take out some fossil emissions, but then we have less sequestration in our natural ecosystems, and we gain nothing. We destroy nature probably. We have in 2 years a very important summit of the Biodiversity Convention. We need to align the climate agendas and the biodiversity agendas, because when I run around here, I get the impression that people don't get that we are not only facing a massive climate problem, we are facing the first human-made mass extinction of species, and this is our very basis of our life, as much as an intact climate. So we need to integrate those two.
And we have issues with water. And we have
It's multiple issues. Yeah.
multiple issues. Well, Christoph, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you,
and
and
look forward to meeting up with you again.
yeah, thanks you very much for your time.
Okay.